Man, let me tell y'all something, because the more I think about this, the more it shakes me deep inside, and I still cannot believe how all this happened to me, because I thought I had lived long enough, seen enough, earned enough, lost enough to not be surprised by anything in this world, but man, was I wrong, asterisk. I mean, I've been around the block. I hosted game shows, met presidents, sat across from millionaires, broke bread with folks from every corner of life, been broke, been rich, been broke again, and thought I had life figured out. Thought experience alone made me wise, but nothing humbled me and confused me and woke me up the way this one thing did, asterisk. I was sitting there one day, minding my business, literally not bothering nobody, and somebody casually said, "Steve, have you ever looked at the scientific things in the Quran?" And I just stared, because I said, "The what in the what?" Because look, man, I ain't no scientist. I'd barely passed math in school. I still do not understand why letters ever got mixed with numbers X plus Y and all that mess, and folks out here acting like that is normal. So when somebody told me the Quran had scientific facts, I said, hold up, you cannot just drop something like that and walk away. I need to know, asterisk, because I don't just believe somebody because they said something, not even if they wearing a lab coat or holding a degree or got a beard down to their chest and speak in big words. I need evidence. I need clarity. I need something real to chew on, asterisk. So I started looking into it myself, and let me tell you something, it felt like somebody turned the lights on in a dark room I didn't even know I was standing in, and the first thing that hit me was that the Quran said the universe is expanding, and I said, wait, hold up now, because I know enough to know that expansion of the universe is a modern concept, something Edwin Hubble figured out with giant telescopes barely 100 years ago. But this book from the 600s said it long before telescopes, before NASA, before anybody ever even imagined sending a rocket into space, asterisk. So I sat there like somebody punched me in the mind, because how does a man in the desert surrounded by sand and camels know something that took humanity over 1,000 years to prove with advanced technology and billions of dollars worth of equipment? That was the beginning of my curiosity turning into straight shock. Then I saw verses saying mountains have deep roots like stakes and that they help stabilize the earth. And this lined up perfectly with modern geology, because mountain roots go deep underground, acting as stabilizing structures, and no one in the 7th century was drilling holes into mountains to measure anything. They barely had metal tools, let alone scientific equipment, asterisk. So now I am thinking, okay, this is weird, but maybe coincidence happens, right? But then I read about the stages of the embryo inside the womb described in the Quran in detail. A clot, then bones, then flesh covering the bones. And I said, hold on, because that exact sequence was discovered only after microscopes got strong enough for embryologists to study the womb, and that happened in the 20th century, asterisk. How in the world does a man who could not even read or write recite something doctors today teach in medical school, asterisk? I found myself replaying that question in my head again and again. Because once you see one thing, you start noticing more, and when the more keeps showing up, you got to stop acting like it is nothing, asterisk. Then came the part about two seas meeting but not mixing, and I remember laughing because water mixes, we learned that as kids, but modern oceanography says where fresh water meets salt water, a barrier forms a halocline where different densities keep the waters from blending, and the Quran described that long before submarines, long before deep sea exploration, long before any human being ever saw that with their eyes, asterisk. And now I'm sitting there rubbing my head like, man, how do you explain this, asterisk? Because coincidence do not stack this high, coincidence don't pile up across different branches of science, astronomy, geology, biology, oceanography, physics, atmospheric science, hydrology. It don't add up like that, asterisk. The Quran mentioned 7 layers of heavens, which modern science interprets as layers of the atmosphere: troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere. And it fits because the Arabic word used means layers on top of one another, asterisk. Nobody riding camels in the 7th century was talking about atmospheric layers, asterisk. Then the book says the sun runs on its fixed course, and I said, wait just a minute now, because we all grew up thinking the sun sits still and the earth moves around it. But astronomy revealed that the sun too is moving, orbiting the Milky Way at incredible speeds, taking the whole solar system along, and that knowledge is extremely recent in scientific history. Asterisk, so now I am trying to breathe because every direction I look the Quran keeps revealing something I never even imagined it contained asterisk, and I said to myself, okay, Steve, either this book was written by the greatest scientific mind ever, or it came from a source beyond human capability asterisk, and since the Prophet Muhammad could not read, could not write, did not study science, never traveled to universities, never sat in laboratories, and lived in a desert far from oceans, glaciers, mountains, and tools, how could he possibly know any of this asterisk? Then I learned about the verse describing pain receptors in the skin, and this one made me freeze in place because modern biology says pain is detected through nerve endings in the skin, and when skin is destroyed, deeper tissues don't feel pain the same way asterisk. This scientific discovery is new, but the Quran mentioned replacement of skin, so a person may feel pain, and I said, man, this is biology spelled out in a time when nobody even knew what cells were asterisk. Then I read a verse describing deep sea darkness as layers of darkness one above another, so thick that if a man stretches his hand he cannot see it, and modern exploration shows that once sunlight penetrates the ocean past a certain depth it disappears, layer by layer, until total darkness surrounds everything asterisk. Prophet Muhammad never saw an ocean, never saw a ship bigger than a small boat, never traveled into deep waters, and he definitely never went thousands of feet below sea level to know that asterisk. And every time science discovers something, the Quran sounds like it is calmly saying, yeah, I mentioned that already, that is not normal, that is not random, that is not accidental. And what gets me the most is this: the Prophet never claimed these things came from him. He never said, look what I discovered. He said every time, this is revelation from God, and that humility is a sign of truth because liars crave credit, truth bearers point upward asterisk. I sat there thinking, how come nobody told me this? How come this ain't taught in schools? How come this isn't on the news? How come I am 60 years old learning things Muslims knew for centuries while the world ignored it asterisk? Then I realized people don't reject Islam because they understand it. They reject it because they have never actually looked into it. They see headline stereotypes, rumors, fear, and misinformation, but they never open the source asterisk. They judge the book without reading the book, just like people judge other people without knowing them asterisk. I kept reading about the water cycle mentioned in detail: evaporation, winds forming clouds, rain falling, and dew measure water stored in the earth, and that is hydrology explained long before science developed the field. Asterisk, the Quran says winds fertilize clouds, something scientists confirmed as biological cloud seeding, where winds carry particles that help clouds produce rain asterisk. The Quran explains rain reviving dead land, rain measured rain stored, all incredibly accurate scientifically asterisk. How did an uneducated man in the desert know how water cycles through the world asterisk? Then I learned about the preservation of fingerprints mentioned indirectly because the Quran says humans will be recreated down to their very fingertips, and fingerprints are unique to each person, something discovered only in recent times asterisk. Then I saw references to iron being sent down, and scientists today say iron came to Earth through meteorites from space because iron forms inside massive stars before falling onto planets asterisk. The Quran said iron was sent down asterisk. Then there were mentions of cosmic orbits, the separation of the sky as a protective ceiling, the origin of the universe resembling the Big Bang, expansion, contraction, everything asterisk. And at that point I put the book down and walked around the room like I needed air because it was too much accuracy. For coincidence asterisk, a book revealing truths across dozens of fields, across centuries, across discoveries that keep unfolding like chapters in a story that started before we understood any of it asterisk. And I sat there thinking, all my life I heard opinions about Islam but never facts, and now that I was seeing the facts firsthand, I couldn't deny the weight they carried asterisk. It made me question every assumption I ever had, made me feel small in a good way, made my ego sit down and my heart wake up asterisk. I started realizing truth doesn't scream, it whispers and waits, because the Quran doesn't need advertising, it doesn't need marketing, it doesn't need flashy campaigns. It speaks to the sincere seeker, and when you seek you find asterisk. The more I searched, the more the book unfolded like a universe of knowledge, each verse revealing something deeper asterisk. It spoke about the alternation of night and day, the precise balance of the universe, The purpose of creation, the order in nature, the balance in the human soul, the guidance for human life asterisk, and I realize something heavy. Truth isn't comfortable, tr. Youth demands growth. Truth requires humility, and most people stop searching once they feel comfortable. And that comfort becomes a prison. I kept reading late at night. Laptop open, lights low, silence around me, and my heart beating fast. Because every verse felt like a revelation directed at me. Realized I had spent my whole life hearing about the Quran from people who never read it, and that is the biggest mistake of modern life. Listening to secondhand sources instead of going straight to the truth, and once you hear the truth, you can't unhear it once you see the signs. You can't unsee them once you realize the words are from the creator of the universe. You cannot pretend you didn't notice, and let me tell you something, when revelation and science line up not once, not twice, but repeatedly across centuries, you start thinking maybe the problem was never religion, maybe the problem was human ignorance and arrogance, because this book does not wait for science to validate it. Science is simply discovering what was already written, and that realization changes you. It makes you walk different, think different, feel different, because now you know the world has a guide, a map, a manual, and you've been living without reading ID. Realize the Quran isn't a book for ancient people. It is a book for all time, because it keeps revealing truths as humanity advances, like a message that grows clearer the smarter we get. Now I sit here not as a celebrity, not as a comedian, not as a host, but as a man humbled by truth, a man who realized knowledge doesn't just inform you, sometimes it transforms you. And the more I study, the more I see revelation and science aren't enemies, they are partners, shaking hands across time and space, because truth from God and truth from creation must always match, because the author of both is the same.